Let's set the scene. The date is January 31st, 2026. If you've had an eye on the markets at all, you know the feeling out there. It's not just nervous, it's getting close to frantic. And it's because we just blew past a line in the sand that for a decade economists told us was, well, basically impossible. And this number right here, this is why everyone is panicking. The US government is now officially paying over $2 trillion a year just in interest payments on its national debt. I mean, just try to wrap your head around a figure that massive. It's staggering. You know, the time for using polite academic terms is over. We're way past calling this a budget deficit. What we're actually staring at is the potential breakdown of the entire global financial system. As our source material bluntly puts it, the engine has completely stopped. To really put that $2 trillion into perspective, think about this. It's now more than the entire national defense budget. It's bigger than Social Security. The fundamental math that our economy runs on, it's officially broken. So that brings us to the really urgent question, the one that affects millions of people. What about that old, reliable safety net, the 60-40 portfolio? For generations, it was the absolute bedrock of planning for your retirement. But now, people are calling it a death trap. And that leaves us with a truly terrifying question. Are we heading for a familiar market crash, or is it something way, way worse? To even begin to understand what might be coming next, we have to look back. Because history offers us a really painful lesson, one that I think is deeply relevant to every single one of us. We need to talk about the legendary investor Ray Dalio. But here's the thing, the story that matters for us in 2026 isn't about his incredible success. It's about his catastrophic failure back in 1982. So Dalio was this genius in the 70s, a true visionary. But that success led to a dangerous kind of overconfidence. By 1981, he was looking at the debt levels, sound familiar? And he became absolutely convinced that a massive deflationary depression was coming. He was so sure, he bet everything on it. But he got one single critical detail wrong. He misjudged how the system would react. The Fed pivoted, the market didn't crash in the way he expected, and for Dalio, the result was complete and total ruin. And this is the image that should haunt us. This is what it comes down to. A guy who was on top of the financial world, so broke he had to borrow $4,000 from his dad just to buy groceries. This isn't just an abstract financial story, it's a deeply human one about total ruin, and it's a chilling mirror for the millions who might soon find their own purchasing power has vanished. The lesson Dalio learned was a humbling one, and it's so important for today. You can be 100% right about the problem. You can see the crisis coming with perfect clarity, but you can still be utterly destroyed by the solution the system cooks up to save itself. And that's a profound warning for anyone in 2026 who sees the debt problem but is betting on the wrong kind of outcome. Okay, so this brings us to why 2026 isn't just a repeat of 1982. It's structurally different. And it comes down to a mechanism called the refinancing cliff. And, cliff is exactly the right word. It's like a physical wall that the economy is about to slam into at full speed. So what is it? Well, here's what it means in plain English. Remember that whole free money era back in 2020 and 2021? Trillions upon trillions of dollars in debt were issued by corporations and governments at basically 0% interest. Well, guess what? That debt is now coming due. It has to be rolled over, but not at 0%. It has to be refinanced at today's much, much higher rates. And this is really the key difference. The historical comparison to 1982 only goes so far. Back then, interest rates were almost 20%. That gave the Fed a massive runway to cut rates and juice the economy. But today, our debt-to-GDP ratio is already through the roof. We have almost no room left to maneuver. The system has basically no flexibility left. Because of all this, the very idea of a bond has fundamentally changed. For 40 years, bonds were the safe part of your portfolio, the risk-free ballast. Not anymore. Now they are assets of guaranteed purchasing power loss. And why is that? It's simple. The government literally has to print new money just to pay the interest on the money it already owes. So if you hold a government bond today, you're not a savvy investor. You are a creditor to a system that is failing. So this all leads us to the central question, the big debate right now. Is the final outcome going to be a classic deflationary crash like we've seen before, or is it going to be something more subtle, more insidious, an inflationary repricing driven by something called the money illusion? Look, there are basically two ways this can go. Path one is a deflationary crash. It's what we all picture: asset prices fall off a cliff and cash is king. But path two, this inflationary repricing, that's different. That's tricky. Your stock portfolio might even go up. You could feel rich on paper. But the actual value of your money, what it can buy in the real world, collapses. Your purchasing power gets secretly destroyed even while your account statement looks fine. For our entire lives, the natural instinct during a crisis has been to run for safety, to flee into government bonds. But as the source material warns, in 2026, that old safe haven has become the very center of the firestorm. Fleeing into bonds now is like running into the burning building for safety. So, if the old safe havens are now traps, what's the alternative? Well, the sources we're looking at suggest that the super wealthy are already making a big pivot. They're moving towards something they call a sovereignty solution. It's basically a way of opting out of this entire system of paper promises. So what is strategic sovereignty? It's really a strategy of owning real things, real assets that don't have counterparty risk. That just means their value doesn't depend on somebody else's ability or promise to pay you back. We're talking about things like gold, commodities, energy infrastructure. Crucially, these are assets that a central bank can't just devalue by hitting print on a keyboard. And this really lays out the choice in stark terms. On one hand, you have the 60-40 death trap. It relies on paper promises. It holds assets that can be printed away into worthlessness. It's a 40% bet on a dying currency. On the other hand, you have strategic sovereignty. It relies on real assets, things with actual intrinsic value. It's an exit from a system of guaranteed loss. Suddenly, the 60-40 doesn't look so conservative, does it? It looks like the most reckless bet of all. Let's just bring this all back to what really matters: the human cost. Because for millions of people who are at or near retirement, there is no second chance. There's no time to rebuild from this kind of crisis. This is about the crucial, critical difference between having paper wealth and having real-world purchasing power. And this, right here, is why this is so urgent. The real tragedy of 2026 isn't going to be some hedge fund manager losing his firm like Ray Dalio did. He had time to rebuild. No, the real tragedy will be the teacher, the nurse, the person who followed all the rules their entire life, saved diligently in their 60-40 portfolio, and then they wake up one day to find that the retirement they were promised, the purchasing power they earned, has just vanished into thin air. So we're going to leave you with this final, direct question. The warning lights are flashing bright red. The debt math is broken. That refinancing wall is no longer in the distance, it's right here. So you have to ask yourself, are you still holding on to the 60-40 death trap, or are you taking steps towards strategic sovereignty?